Breaking open that unassuming clump of mud reveals a bio-cement vault holding living prisoners in total darkness. The architect inside surgically paralyzes its victims to stockpile fresh meat. These are the hidden structures where infants are wielded as hot glue guns, and caustic acid is the only exit. And before this is over, a colony of blind architects will quietly solve a problem aerospace engineers are still working on. Mud dauber. To the human eye, a mud dauber nest is an architectural blemish requiring removal. The insect gathers mineral dust, synthesizing it with salivary enzymes to forge a waterproof, structurally rigid sarcophagus built to withstand extreme thermal fluctuations. The quiet horror is locked inside. Beneath the hardened exterior sits a stockpile of spiders. They are not dead. Decomposing tissue is useless to a growing larva. The wasp acts as a surgical anesthesiologist. A precise sting to the central nervous system severs motor function while leaving autonomic systems intact. Conscious and breathing, the spiders are stuffed into the clay cylinder, bodies compressed into the confined space. A single egg is placed on the highest, still breathing spider before the exit is hermetically sealed with an enzymatic cement cap. The larva hatches into a sealed room full of living food. It has never known hunger. Paper wasp. They construct exposed paper cities hanging in plain sight, apparently defenseless. The foundation is the hexagon, mathematically the most stable geometry, requiring the absolute minimum of material. Aerospace engineers use this exact schematic for deep-sea pressure vessels and satellite frames. The insect perfected it millions of years prior, chewing wood fibers into a weather-resistant cellulose matrix. But the fatal flaw of any suspended citadel is the single point of attachment, the pedestal. To wandering ant colonies, this narrow stalk is a highway straight into a nursery of defenseless, protein-rich larvae. The defense is entirely invisible. The adult constantly strokes the stalk, secreting a neuroactive hydrocarbon from an abdominal gland. To invading insects, that chemical smear functions as an impenetrable toxic moat. The nest hangs in full view. Nothing gets in. Trapdoor Spider. A layer of decaying oak leaves and damp topsoil conceals a pressurized biomechanical vault. The trapdoor spider excavates a perfectly cylindrical shaft, lining the dirt walls with structural silk to prevent a subterranean cave-in. The engineering marvel is the hatch, a composite door of soil and silk, perfectly flush with the ground, mounted on a tensioned silken hinge. The architect waits in absolute darkness at the bottom, front legs pressed against the walls, reading the microscopic vibrations of footsteps above. It can hold that position for months. Same shaft, same door, same darkness. When a target crosses the strike zone, the hatch snaps open in under a millisecond. The predator erupts, drags the victim beneath the earth, and the hinge slams the door shut. The victim vanishes into the ground before its own nervous system registers the breach. Puss Moth Cocoon. The Puss moth caterpillar chews host tree bark, mixing coarse wood fibers with a specialized silk resin. Plastered against the trunk, this composite matrix cures into a solid wooden shell, visually indistinguishable from the tree itself. A perfect shelter. And a perfect trap. The adult moth that forms inside possesses zero mechanical chewing mouthparts. It cannot break out, so it doesn't try. Just prior to emergence, the moth secretes a concentrated solution of potassium hydroxide directly onto the inner wall, an industrial-grade caustic base that chemically melts a precise exit hole through hardened wood. It synthesizes corrosive lye to burn its way out of its own crib. Further up the canopy, an entire colony faces the same problem and solves it by turning its children into tools instead. Darwin bark spider. The Darwin bark spider abandons delicate wind-blown webs to engineer a ballistic catch net. Anchor lines span up to 25 meters, bridging rushing water, the longest known web span of any spider on Earth. It doesn't build on land. It builds above rivers, using the banks as anchor points, the current below as a moat. The silk itself is a biomechanical outlier. It outperforms industrial Kevlar by a factor of 10. When a heavy insect strikes the mesh at velocity, the kinetic energy is not deflected. It is absorbed. The material stretches, bleeding off force until the target hangs suspended, immobilized over open water. The spider doesn't chase. It doesn't need to. Whatever crosses the river comes to it. Human synthetic polymers snap under a fraction of this torsional strain. We have spent decades trying to replicate it. We haven't. Weaver ant. A sprawling citadel of living leaves sways in the canopy, completely weather-sealed. The paradox is that the workers constructing it possess zero silk-producing glands. They cannot synthesize a single drop of biological adhesive. So the colony reaches into its own nursery. Adult workers retrieve undeveloped larvae, carry them to the construction site in their mandibles, and form living chains, pulling massive leaf edges together through sheer coordinated tension. Then, they squeeze. The physical pressure forces the larva to extrude thick biological silk. The worker sweeps it back and forth across the leaf seam, wielding its own young as a living adhesive dispenser. The larvae are fully drained of their silk reserves before they ever reach maturity. The fortress gets built. The children pay for it. Caddisfly Larvae. A soft-bodied organism living in high-velocity freshwater rapids faces immediate destruction from predatory fish and sheer mechanical force. To survive, it operates as a benthic stonemason. The larva gathers heavy, irregular materials from the riverbed, grains of sand, fragments of shell, microscopic pebbles, and cements them into a mobile shell around its own body. It will spend up to 2 years inside that case, rebuilding and expanding it as it grows. The engineering miracle is the mortar. Standard adhesives dissolve in fast-moving water. The caddisfly counters this by extruding a biopolymer that strictly requires full submersion to activate. Water is the catalyst. Once applied to stone, the torrential current forces the protein fibers to align and cure, forming a flexible, unbreakable mesh that tightens under pressure. The harder the current hits, the stronger the bond. It builds its armor from the same force trying to destroy it. Compass termite. The outback is a thermal crucible, flat, exposed, lethal at midday. Most insect colonies retreat underground to survive it. The compass termite builds directly into it. They construct wedge-shaped monolithic slabs of hardened earth, up to 3 meters high, edges sharp as headstones. A single mound can house over 1 million individuals. A field of these structures looks like a graveyard. It functions like a power grid. Every monolith is aligned on a precise north-south axis, zero deviation across the entire colony. Using internal magnetic receptors, the blind workers position the broad, flat faces to catch the low-angle radiation of early morning and late evening sun, warming the nursery when temperatures are safe. At solar noon, when heat reaches lethal intensity, only the razor-thin top edge faces the sky. Minimal surface, minimal absorption. The internal temperature stays stable while the ground outside reaches 60 degrees. Built by blind architects, calibrated to the rotation of the planet.